This is your official introduction into white person music.
Yeah, that's kind of true.
Yeah.
I didn't think about that.
Yeah, Coldplay is referred to as one of the whitest bands.
Yeah. Well, it's also because they're British, so that like adds more whiteness to it, doesn't it?
That's true.
It's
Yeah,
like the whitest white people.
There are some British bands that aren't as like stereotypically white as Coldplay, but like they started with like the kind of Starbucks era of like millennials who would listen to music in the early 2000s.
And that would buy the CDs from...
Yeah. And then it turned into kind of just like older white people. And then it was just on the radio and it was popular in the US. And then it's like, oh, yeah.
Wow.
But it's also like kind of rock adjacent, you know?
Yeah, it's like in a weird mix of rock pop.
Yeah, but it's definitely a very like white coated genre.
I find that funny because who does Chris Martin date?
Dakota Johnson.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking, which is like, I feel like he's the whitest, or like the band is the whitest band and she's kind of like the whitest star.
Yeah,
in a way.
He was married to Gwyneth Paltrow for a while as well.
She's also very white.
Very
white.
Californian white.
Yeah, she's honestly whiter than Dakota Johnson.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, especially with Goop.
I was going to say, yeah.
But hey, if you want to give us some money for ad scoop, we're up for that.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I will try out your products. I'm very tempted to try out the vagina candle.
Yeah, that's perfect for you, isn't it?
Yeah,
I want to try out the they have like vampire spray to keep vampires away.
Oh,
I think.
Wow, that's good.
I want to try that.
Yeah, that'd keep away half of my friend group, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's why you don't eat garlic.
Exactly. Hello, and welcome back to the Uncultured Pop Culture Podcast. My name is Brandon.
And my name is David. I'm the co-pilot.
Yes, exactly. Episode. We just talked about that because we had to figure out who was saying the opening this week.
Because our minds are so shot that we don't remember what happened a week ago.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, to be fair, it was 9 days ago.
Yeah, 2 days.
So, yeah, we're recording this on a Sunday, and that is probably the day when I have the least amount of brain capacity.
I mean, I feel like I don't have any brain capacity on any day.
I don't know.
I'm just exhausted.
I'm exhausted on Sundays. Every Sunday is my least favorite day of the week. Even if I don't have like a job or school the next day, there's just something about Sunday that just is so depressing.
It feels like the end of the week.
Yeah.
And then you're like, wow, I didn't do anything at all.
Exactly.
I wasn't productive. And then you're like, well, that's another week of my life gone.
But I know you were productive this last week because I know you watched a movie that I also watched with you.
Yeah, Warfare.
Yes.
Which, okay, what did you think?
I liked it. I gave it a 3.5, which you can see on my Letterboxd plug, or David's Letterboxd plug. And
I go to 4 plug.
Yeah, I thought it was very good. I didn't know it was Alex Garland, who I didn't see Civil War, but I've heard mixed reviews on it.
Yeah, he co-wrote this one. Mm-hmm. And I know some people have said that Warfare was kind of like conservative propaganda. I disagree. Like, I didn't get that because to me, like, honestly, after watching that movie, I'm like, that makes me want to go to war even less.
Yes. You know? It's not like explicitly anti-war, but you're watching people get blown up in the most like gruesome ways ever. Yeah. And it's just like such a real depiction of like what it's like that it's kind of like, I never want to do this.
Yeah. It's kind of like a slice of life in a war film.
Yes, absolutely.
It's showing us like the worst day of these people's lives, probably.
Yeah. It was very good. If you're at all scared or don't like loud noises, of which there are a lot.
Or don't like gore.
Yeah, there's some disgust. I had to look away at a few times. It's pretty it's nasty. I saw you looking away too.
Yeah, I was like,
Yeah, but there's really good sound design in this, if that's your thing.
100%. So we recommend go watch it while it's still in theaters.
Yeah, or wait the month. I mean, at this point, when this episode comes out, it might not be in theaters anymore.
It's going to be gone. But did you listen to anything?
I did. Yeah, and then we'll get back to what you watched because I think you watched something else.
I watched not a lot, but I watched some good things.
Okay,
this week.
I listened to one specifically that I wanted to bring up, which was Articulate Excuses by J.P. Sachs. It's an EP. Now,
I've never heard of that person either.
Yes, he's a Canadian songwriter. He had one hit in like 2020, 2021. Yeah, and I used to be a fan of him. After listening to this, I unfollowed him on everything. This was one of the worst things I've ever heard. It
was that bad.
It was completely terrible. And it's sad because I think he has a really good voice and I know he can write good songs, but this was just so ridiculously terrible.
What was terrible about it?
Well, there's a song called Smartphone Make Me Dumb. Okay. This is the chorus. Well, the pre-chorus. Smartphone make me dumb. Whiskey make me numb. Women make me. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
And that's not even the worst song on there. There's one song called Baddie with a Vape Addiction. He's in his 30s, I think. And there's another song, I think it's called Let a Ginger Make You Cry or something like that. That was the song that ended it all for me. I couldn't.
You were just like, I can't take it anymore.
I listened to the whole thing and I regret every second of it. It was awful.
So and pretty much he pulled a Katy Perry.
It's crazy because like he's super talented. Yeah. And this was just, I don't know what this was.
Well, I feel like, I don't know, you got directors like that too.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean,
who can direct something and you're like, why are you making this movie?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the other thing is like, it doesn't even feel like TikTok bait music necessarily. It just feels like poorly developed.
Yeah.
Which is disappointing.
It kind of feels like he was thinking about what do the kids listen to these days.
How do you do, fellow children?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it was not the vibe. Fun. But that was the main thing I listened to this last week. I listened to it last Sunday. It took me 2 days to listen to an album again because I was so like depressed from listening to that. I just watched YouTube and like and listened to podcasts. I couldn't do it.
You're like, this is the final straw in my like liking of music.
I just had to give up for a little bit.
Jesus
but
Christ.
Anyway, what else did you watch this past week?
I kind of want to listen to that album, to be honest.
Yeah. It's I don't know. It's not even like it's not even bad enough for it to be like enjoyable to listen to. It's just like sad.
It's too bad for that.
Yeah. It's not even
depressing.
I guess it's not bad enough to like laugh at it. I guess it's just like bad enough where you're like, wow, I wish this didn't exist.
Yeah. Damn. On a much more positive note, I watched Sinners.
Oh, yeah.
Finally. Yeah. Which I've had so much fun tracking the box office because it's been doing amazing. This weekend.
Movies are so back.
Yeah, they're so back for like the 30th time this year. Yeah. It made $45 million, or is projected to make $45 million this weekend. Last weekend, it made 48.
Wow.
It only dropped that little. But
that's pretty crazy.
Yeah. I watched it. It's a gorgeous film visually. I love the music. That was probably my favorite part. And I sent you one of the songs because I was like, you need to listen to this.
It was good.
Yeah. I liked the movie. I did have my problems with it. I do think it got overhyped for me, to be honest, which is always kind of a shame.
I mean, all of our friends were hyping it up as well, which I don't know if that contributed to it.
I still liked it. I honestly had problems with the second, like third of the film. I thought the first 2/3 were very, very strong.
You mean the third of the film? Not the second?
Yeah, sorry.
Okay,
the third. Sorry. Yeah, the first 2/3 were very strong. I just feel like it kind of lost the ball in the last third.
Interesting.
And it was still really good. Like, don't get me wrong. I gave it a 4. It's just kind of the case of where you're watching something, and as you're watching it, or like when you finish watching it, there are things you can see what kept you from loving it, you know? Like that. You know? You're like, damn it, if only it was like this. That being said, like, it was still a really good movie, and obviously respect to Coogler for making it and making like a box office hit.
Yeah.
That's an original movie.
Especially, I was going to say an original movie, and like in this day and age where it's increasingly harder to have like just movies do well.
And a period horror movie too.
That's true, yeah.
Which is even harder, I feel like, to make a success.
Yeah.
So respect to him.
But you recommend it?
I recommend it. I mean, it's not for everyone because it is like vampires. But I would give it a chance even if that isn't really your thing, because the soundtrack to this movie is crazy. I highly recommend.
Nice. Yeah, I do want to see this one.
Yeah, I would watch it for sure. I think it's worth it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let's get into it.
After taking a break to talk about Boston.
Yeah, we just kind of took a break. We took a break to drink water.
That devolved.
And then we were just kind of chatting, you know? Yeah. But I feel like we have a lot to say this week.
Let's get into it.
So yeah, let's do it. So this album this week is Viva La Vida, or Death and All His Friends by Coldplay. This is their 4th album, released in June of 2008. And I want to quickly start off with one thing. I originally wanted to do the Prospects March edition of this album, which adds an additional 8 songs. And then I realized that there's like 3 or 4 B-sides to the singles as well that are important to do. In this, maybe 10 tracks, but it's actually 13 songs because there's 3 hidden songs on it. So we'd be pushing like 24 songs probably.
Yeah.
And
it's a little too much.
Right. So I decided that we will do that on another time.
It's too much white people music for one day, I think.
Yeah. So after listening to this album, I went back and listened to Prospects March, and I was like, wow, this is really good. And the B-sides as well.
Now I'm intrigued to listen to Prospects March.
So this album was preceded by 2 singles, Violet Hill on May 6th, 2008, and Viva La Vida on May 25th, 2008.
Of course.
And then the album came out like 2 weeks later. So that's kind of unique. And then there were 2 singles after the album's release, Lost in November of 2008, and then Strawberry Swing in September of 2009.
Jesus.
Over a year after.
Yeah. Which is like that thing that we talked about in the last episode with the release of singles before.
Yes.
Yeah.
And weirdly, there's only the 2 like within the month ahead of this album, which is very weird. It's not like a typical thing. Maybe it's more typical for Coldplay. I don't really know because I haven't like looked at their release schedules, but I always thought it was more of a have a single like a while before to build up hype for the album.
Very close.
Yeah. So this album was executive produced by Brian Eno, who is a legend in ambient and electronic music. And he made a note on here and he said, every single song has to sound different.
I saw that.
I think comes across in the album because while they're all like related to each other, there's definitely a like different vibe in each of the songs. They're very easy to tell apart.
Yeah. What's really interesting is I think that's true, while at the same time, every song has that distinct Coldplay sound.
Yes.
You know?
And also this distinct Viva La Vida Coldplay sound.
Yeah,
because
very specific.
This is like, I mean, it's different from all of their other stuff, but it's like, it still makes sense in their catalog. This was recorded from 2006 to 2008 after the Twisted Logic tour, which promoted their previous album, X and Y, from 2005.
Right.
And it was slightly interrupted by the last leg of the Twisted Logic tour in, I think it was 2007. And this was described by Chris as a more colorful version of their sound from the first 3 albums, which kind of functioned like a trilogy. They're all much more sonically related. They're kind of that, like, the sound that you associate with Coldplay, I guess, of the, like, rock, kind of.
Right. That era of their music making.
So I have some quotes here from the band members. They'll be, like, interspersed. This one's from Chris.
Right.
Oh, also, I should introduce the band. There's 4 of them. Chris Martin, Guy Berryman, Johnny Buckland, and Will Champion. Those are the performing members. Then they also count Phil Harvey, their manager, as a member of the band.
And of course, Chris Martin is the lead vocalist and kind of the
he's kind
head of the band.
Right, exactly. Although they are all equal, which they do something that I really enjoy. I think it's the U2 model, but now it's more referred to as the Coldplay model, where every member of the band gets credit on every single song they write.
I like that.
And they just share the profits of everything, which I really enjoy. I think that's the way to do it because then there's no argument.
I agree too. Yeah.
So I have a quote from Chris, and he says, "What we've managed cleverly to do on this album is work with people who are much more talented than we are and pass it off as our own." And I like that. That's kind of their vibe always, which is like, we're just guys. We just make this stuff, and then we work with people who are way better than us, which is kind of like the way to do it, in my opinion.
Kudos to them for admitting.
Exactly. And I have a few more of those like sprinkled in here on different songs of them just being kind of like slightly self-deprecating, which I think is kind of fun. This one is from Wikipedia. When asked about why Lovers in Japan and Reign of Love had an additional song, bassist Guy Berryman explained that the band had wanted to keep the album concise with a total of 10 tracks. And the drummer, Will Champion, followed with, "We just preferred to have less titles and more stuff. The album as a whole has got the most on it, but it's the shortest. We wanted to make it almost impossible for you to not listen to it all in one go," which I fully support. I love listening. That's always how I experience albums, is sitting down and listening to them. Even if I don't like it, I give it that time of just, because it's a project, you know, it's a body of work.
Give it that time of day.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's same thing with movies as well. I try to not interrupt it as much as I can. Sometimes I need to.
Sometimes it's impossible when you're like, I just don't have time, but
And sometimes you need to pee. Yeah. Or you need to get food, you know.
And sometimes you're in a theater and someone's rowdy and you gotta
get the manager.
Anyways.
This album has a lot of collaborations with David Rossi, who's an Italian violinist.
I like the way his first name was pronounced.
Davide.
Damn.
I'm assuming that's how you say it, or it's Davide. I don't know. If it's Italian, I
prefer the first one.
Anyway, yeah. But
Davide.
he is a violinist. He still works with them. I think their last album that came out last year had his collaborations. I know the one before that did for sure. He's very talented, and he does all of their like strings and stuff, which there are a lot of strings on this album.
A lot.
And then they also do something that I have always loved and would do if I was in a band, and maybe I'll do with my own solo project, which for this whole album promotional cycle, they used French Revolutionary costumes and everything. All of their public appearances, they look in one specific way, which I think is really fun. Yeah. And each album has its own like look to it as well, because Everyday Life, which came out in 2019, they're just wearing black suits the whole time, which is really cool.
I like that so much better than just, this is what we look like. We just put on some clothes.
Exactly. Yeah. They have a specific style for each album that like matches it.
Yeah. Because even pop stars, they change costumes a lot, but it's not themed to the album or something. It's kind of themed to them more, what is their specific style.
Exactly. I do think
which is cool, but it's like after a while, it's like, like you could bring something more.
Exactly. Yeah. I do think there is one example. It's not necessarily tied to the album, but Ariana Grande does have a very specific style with each album. Right. Of her like costume and her race. But anyway, that's beside the point.
And of course the ponytail too. We can't forget that.
Like her stuff isn't necessarily tied to the music, but there is like each album has like a look to it. Yeah. Where this is much more like related to the music. They're went in revolutionary costumes because that's kind of the theme of the album.
And that's where the cover is, the revolutionary painting of 1924 or something like that. Yeah.
So the album received positive reviews from critics, and it won Best Rock Album at the 2009 Grammys. It was also the best-selling album of 2008, and it was ranked as one of the best albums of the year.
Damn.
Which I didn't realize they were ever like this critically acclaimed, you know? Because people like to hate on them.
Yeah, nowadays I feel like especially people are kind of like Coldplay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was also rated, this is from Wikipedia, it was also rated as the worst album of 2008 by NME.
Jesus Christ.
But NME also gave it an 8 out of 10. What? So they had two different like editors, I think, decide on that, which I think is funny because I think it got too popular and then they're like, actually, this is the worst.
Yeah, this is terrible. Maybe that was the lowest rated and everything else was above an 8 out of 10.
Yeah, which would be crazy. And then there's a companion EP, which I mentioned, Prospects March, which also is kind of a deluxe edition. It's a standalone EP, and then it's also like reissued as Viva La Vida Prospects March edition.
When did that one come out?
That came out, I think, in November of 2008. It was late. It was the same year. And it featured extras from the album, as well as then there's also the B-sides, which came out with the singles. That don't appear on either edition, which you have to dig for, which I think is also very fun.
That's really interesting that it didn't appear.
Yeah, it's kind of exciting because then you're like, oh, there's an extra song I didn't know about, which I remember discovering that when I was like 16. So before we get into the track by track, I wanted to ask you, have you heard Coldplay before, or is this your first time?
I have.
Okay.
I've never listened to a full album before.
Okay. What have you heard?
But obviously I've heard Viva La Vida, the song.
I figured, yeah.
Who hasn't heard that? And then I've also heard Sky Full of Stars.
Oh, yes.
And I will say this is kind of getting a little ahead of ourselves, or of myself, but I do really like both those songs.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. Going into this, I was like, oh yeah, I'll probably like this. But of course you never know, so we'll see.
Right, we will see. I'm very curious. So with that, let's get into the first song, which is Life in Technicolor. This one is instrumental.
Yeah.
It's written by Coldplay, which consists of Chris, Guy, Johnny, and Will, and John Hopkins, who is a kind of electronic composer as well,
right?
And producer. And then it's produced by Brian Eno, Marcus Draves, and John Hopkins. And it contains a sample right at the beginning of Light Through the Veins by John Hopkins, which also appears in the last song.
It's his own sample.
Yeah, it's his own song that they kind of like rework into Coldplay, which I think is pretty interesting. Cool. And there is a version with lyrics on Prospects March called Life in Technicolor 2.
Right.
Which extends it a little bit.
That's interesting because I do feel that I was kind of waiting for the lyrics to start in the song, even though they don't fully do.
Yeah, I mean, there's
yeah.
but that's about it.
But I did think it was a really interesting way to open the album. I like it as the opener.
This is a perfect song to talk about my philosophy. There are a lot of philosophies about songwriting.
Yeah.
Mainly that if you write a song, it should be able to be performed on just the guitar and voice or just the piano and voice. My philosophy is if you write a song, the song without lyrics should be able to stand on its own as a song. And I think this is a good example of that.
I agree. I think it stands up 100%.
And I love the melody on this one, the tone of the guitar mixed with the piano, which we'll talk about later on Lovers in Japan. It's a tack piano, but that's where it's most like notably used.
Yeah, it's interesting with this song. It almost felt like a piece from a soundtrack to me.
I agree.
Which everyone knows I like.
Yeah.
But I found that to be interesting.
What did you rate this one then?
I gave this one a 4.5.
Me too.
Yeah, I think it's a great opener.
Okay, we're off to a good start here.
We are.
I'm excited. I really do love this song, and I like the vocal version as well. I do like the transition between like the ambient piece where it kind of like loops a little bit, and then we go into like the actual song, if you will. But
I will say second strongest song on this album, I think.
Okay, nice.
Yeah.
Then we move on to track 2, which it flows directly into. This is Cemeteries of London. This is written by Coldplay and produced by Brian Eno, Marcus Draves, and Rick Simpson, who did almost every single song on here, just the 3 of them. So Guy said about this song, "When I imagine the song in my head, I see London in 1850, a hell of a lot of rain and men in top hats." And Chris said, "It's our attempt at a Smiths song. It's about witch drownings. I was interested about that period in London where people were supposedly drowned for being a witch. And that's where the song came from, about being accused of something you didn't do."
Who is Smith?
The Smiths?
The Smiths, yeah.
They're a band that's from, I think the 80s is when they were most popular, but they're kind of like jangle pop, like kind of the dawn of like indie and alternative rock.
Right.
Very good.
That's interesting that he brings up drowning witches, because I wrote, this feels like a sea shanty to me.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
In some ways, it feels like a mix between a ballad and a sea shanty or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is a ballad, so I'm assuming you liked it.
I did.
Okay.
I gave it a 4.
Me too. We have the same score in the first 2 songs, which is interesting.
I'm intrigued to see what the rest is going to be like. What I liked particularly was that there was this kind of folksy vibe with the song.
Yeah.
With the mix of rock and pop. And I think at least part of that is because of the way that the guitars play, like the strumming of the guitar. I like that. I think it suits the song very well. And gives it that kind of feeling.
The beat as well. I wrote it's kind of off kilter and it feels like you're skipping almost. I believe it's in 3/4 time
which
as well.
Is probably why I thought of like a shanty or a jig or some Irish kind of,
it's much more like driving, but like skipping in a way. That's like the best way I can describe it. And then I also wanted to say, love the piano at the end. That just plays the little like motif twice.
Yeah.
I love piano. And there's a lot there's a lot of piano on this album. There's a lot of piano in Coldplay's music, which is why I like them so much.
Doesn't Chris Martin play piano?
He does, yeah. And I believe also, I think it's Guy also plays keyboards. Like he does some keyboard stuff in the live show.
Right.
And then Will plays like basically everything. So
Jack of all trades.
Yeah. And he also sings backing vocals, which you can hear him on a few of the songs.
Right.
Track 3 is Lost.
With
exclamation point.
Yeah,
yes.
You got to add that.
You have to. Lost. This one's written by Coldplay and produced by Brian Eno, Marcus Draves, and Rick Simpson. This one started as a drum beat by Will, and it was inspired by Cry Me a River by Justin Timberlake, which I don't know if you've ever heard. That one was produced by Timbaland and Scott Storch, both noted like for their drum beats.
Right. That's interesting.
This was also inspired by Blur and U2. I don't like Blur, I'll say that, so I'm not going to listen to the song that is inspired by.
That's interesting because I don't know anything about Blur or U2. Like, I don't know their music.
Interesting, yeah.
Well, I feel like I've heard some U2 songs, but
I think U2 is pretty good. I haven't like listened to a lot of their stuff. I know them from forcing everybody to listen to their album on an iPhone in like 2014.
Nice. Nice going.
That was, I think we went on a vacation that year, and my dad had an iPhone at that time, and
like
every
one of the
time
first people to have it,
every time you'd get into the car, because we like rented a car, every time you'd get into the car, it would start playing the album in reverse order.
What?
I don't know why.
Why reverse order?
I don't know. It made no sense. But literally every time you'd get in there, I think it's the last song, but we would always hear Leaving California, and that'd be the song. And I was like, what?
Was your family sick of it?
Oh my God, yeah. Because you just hear the first like 20 seconds until you turn it off. So I know that soured a lot of people on YouTube, but I do think they have some good songs. So Lost was released as a single. It was not really a hit, though. It did do well on alternative radio in the US, though. And then I have a quote from Chris. That's often how we write, is we listen to something and we think it's incredible and we feel stupid for not having anything as good as that. So we go and try to play it. And then, of course, because we don't know how to do that, we come up with something new. Which I think is also great. Like if there's anybody who writes or like creates art listening, this is part of my philosophy as well, of like you try to copy somebody else's thing and then you inevitably can't, so it becomes your own. Yeah. Which I think is a good way to like generate new ideas.
I feel like that happens with me a lot in the sense that I try and copy it and it produces something that's bad. And then I'm like, oh God, this is not good. How can I make it better? And then by trying to make it better, it just makes it different.
Exactly.
Leads it to a different way, like a different product.
Yeah, which I really enjoy.
For lack of a better word, because I don't like saying product, to be honest.
Right, yeah. I know. It's a product in the non-capitalist sense. Exactly. It's church organ time.
Oh, yeah.
This song also has a version with Jay-Z. On the Prospects March EP. Chris Martin's a huge fan of hip hop. He was on a Jay-Z song. He was on a Kanye West song.
That's funny because I feel like you don't hear that at all in Coldplay's music.
Not really. You get a little bit more like experimental stuff later, especially on Ghost Stories. You start to get some like hip hop influenced beats. But yeah, Chris Martin's a huge hip hop dude. And then also, I didn't know this about him. I think it's his mom is from Zimbabwe.
Oh, damn.
I believe she's white from Zimbabwe, but he lived there for a while. And the song Strawberry Swing is inspired by his time in Zimbabwe, working at studios there, which I'll talk about when we get to that song. Yeah. But this one builds a lot. I wrote, it's almost a celebration at the end where there's a lot of like soaring guitar parts and it's just kind of big. What did you think?
I feel like the fact that it does build together with, the electric guitar parts and the organ makes it feel a little gospel-y to me.
Yeah, for sure.
And again, kind of like a ballad, but that's because I do kind of feel like that is the Coldplay sound a little bit. You know? A lot of their songs do sound like ballads.
They have ballads and then they have the big soaring, like happy kind of indie rock songs. Pretty almost. Much, yeah.
I thought this was a solid song. I do think that it's weaker than the last two, though.
I agree.
Yeah.
Do we have the same score? 3.5?
3.5.
This is my least favorite song on the album, but I still like it.
Damn.
Which means that you have a song that you like less than this, correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
I do.
I think the next one is where we'll be split.
Yeah.
But
I feel like there are quite a few songs where I was like, this is solid, like this song pretty much. So we'll see how our scores split.
We will see. That moves us on to track 4, which is called 42. This one's written by Coldplay and produced by, you guessed it, Brian Eno, Marcus Dravs, and Rick Simpson. And this is a song in 3 parts without a typical structure. I don't know where I saw this, but I've heard it before as well, that they had been trying to write a song like this for a while, and they always named it 42. And then I have a quote from Chris and Will. Chris says, it's called 42 because it's my favorite number, and I think it's probably in Will's top 3 favorite numbers too. And Will says, 17 and 11, and then 42. I just thought that's a perfect example of their like British kind of humor. That's just, it's so funny to me. And then they've also said it's their version of Bohemian Rhapsody by Queen or Paranoid Android by Radiohead. I don't know the song by Radiohead because I should listen to them, but I don't. I know Radiohead is like exactly what I'm looking for. I've just never like sat down and listened to it because they have so much music that I'm like,
it can be daunting.
Very much so. It's the same thing with King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard, which I don't think you know. But
I love the name though.
Yeah, I think they're only like 10 years old and they have, it's got to be like 25 albums at this point. Like they release like 2 a year. How do they do that? I don't know. I've heard a few songs by them that I like, but then it's just like, I can't keep up with this. Too much. You know?
In cases like that, I feel like the best thing to do is start from the most recent thing and work backwards. Because then
unless it's bad is the problem.
That's true.
Because some bands just run out of stuff to do.
I just feel like there's less of an obligation to be like, I have to listen to all of it that way, you know?
Yeah. And then I did also want to say that 42 is the meaning of life in the book Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. I've not read this. I've heard a lot of people really love it. But yeah, they discover that the meaning of life is the number 42. So I don't know if that's where this comes from, but it could be. And I said that I think section 1, which is the slow part, feels like a continuation of Cemeteries of London, kind of that vibe there. I agree. What did you think about the first section?
I thought it was solid.
It's a ballad.
Yeah, it's
piano ballad,
like their sound again, which I like ballads, but I don't know. I thought it was in some ways I think it's a kind of a different opening to a lot of their other songs.
Yeah, it's more somber.
Yeah, but again, it does kind of fall into the more ballady style of theirs.
Section 2 has a signature Viva La Vida era weird drum beat. Yeah. And there's an accidental in the lead guitar, which like makes it feel imperfect and like uncomfortable in a way, which I think is really cool. This part, section 2, is all instrumental.
Yeah.
What did you think about the second section? I think that's probably my favorite section.
Well, I thought it was an interesting shift. I don't think it fully worked for me though. It felt a little out of place, which might be the fact that I haven't really heard Coldplay, do this specific style of rock before.
This is definitely much more of a, I guess, harder rock stuff that they don't usually do.
Yeah, I feel like maybe that's why it felt a little out of place to me.
Yeah, thanks, Brian, making him do something different.
Yeah, making him make every song sound different.
And then section 3 is the more like triumphant part of it. And they say you didn't get to heaven, but you made it close, which I think is a really good line.
Yeah.
It's kind of sad, This part feels much more related to Lovers in Japan, which is the next song.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, I feel like it's a shift back into...
It's like a bridge.
Yeah, it's a bridge.
Yeah. And then it reprises the first part at the end, and it becomes cyclical, much like the album.
Yeah.
This one... I'm curious to hear your score on.
It's a 3.5 for me.
And so I thought 4.5 for me.
Damn, I do really like this
I do really like this song. This has always been one of the ones that I go back to.
That's interesting.
I think it's because it's weird and unpredictable that I like it.
In some ways, it almost doesn't feel like a song in the sense that I feel like usually a song, it has a slower start, then it builds to the climax, and then it has a denouement, and then it ends. Here, it's kind of like 3 sections.
Exactly, yeah.
Which makes it different.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
I think it's kind of fun. Yeah. It is kind of like Bohemian Rhapsody-esque, where it's, it's kind of disjointed.
Yeah. I feel that for me, Bohemian Rhapsody works really well with that, and here it just doesn't. But again, that's just like a personal thing.
Yeah. Track 5 is a 2-parter. It's Lovers in Japan, and then it includes the sometimes hidden track Reign of Love, which on some editions, it's marked with a slash. On the Spotify edition, it is not.
I was so lost when I first listened to this because I did not know that there was a hidden song.
Yeah.
And so I
forgot to mention that because there's that, and then the next song,
I wrote down my notes for Lovers in Japan, and then I went to the next song and I started writing notes, and then I went to like the track list and I was like, wait, I'm still on Lovers in Japan. What's going on?
Yeah.
So I'm happy you told me finally.
Yes. This one's written by Coldplay, produced by Brian Eno, Marcus Travis, and Rick Simpson. Yeah. There's also the Osaka Sun mix from Prospects March, which was released as a single. Didn't really do that much, but I believe the only difference there is it's a little bit faster.
Right.
And this is the most obvious use of the tack piano, which was built by Guy, Will, and Johnny.
Which I feel like gives it a slightly different sound from a lot of their other songs.
Yeah, I think so. The tack piano is in the other songs, it's just not as prominent.
Yeah, I think the fact that it is so prominent is what makes it feel a little different.
Yeah.
Yeah. It feels like it's a very light and airy song.
I agree.
Very light and airy. But I feel like a lot of their songs are already kind of like that, but this one is even more so.
Yeah, this is a good example of their like happy kind of songs.
Exactly.
And it has a great like shuffling beat. Which like constantly moves the song forward. Like you're never like getting lost in it. And then it has a signature Coldplay euphoric piano melody, which I do enjoy. Yeah. Love good piano, and love when it's unique, when it's a tack piano.
Throw it in there, why not? Yeah.
And that goes into Reign of Love, which is a piano ballad.
Yeah, very slow, very dreamlike.
And I said it also feels a lot bigger with all of the stuff like happening behind it.
Yeah.
And I think that both of these songs combined are kind of like the emotional high point of the album. Like this is when everything's good.
Right. Interestingly enough, I feel like this song is the interlude of the album for me.
I totally see that. Yeah.
Which is interesting because I feel like interludes are typically, you take a break and relax,
I do think it is kind of happier though.
No, it is happier than a lot of interludes. But
well,
I think that's
not necessarily interludes, just kind of like the other parts, the other songs on the album.
I don't know. It's interesting.
Which is kind of interesting because it's both the like emotional kind of like the happier part, and then it's also like slower,
that's
like
why
relaxing.
I think it's an interesting mix because it feels like an interlude, but then also doesn't fully.
Yeah.
Because it's happier maybe than a lot of other interludes, or like more emotionally climaxed.
Yeah.
If that even makes any sense.
I think I get it.
Yeah. You know what I mean.
Yeah. Did you rate these songs separately?
I did.
Okay. What did you rate Lovers in Japan?
Well, thing is, rating them separately didn't matter because I gave them both a 3.5.
Okay. Yeah. Lovers in Japan's a 4.5 for me. Rain of Love is a 4.
You really love these songs.
I do.
Damn.
And so that makes the whole, like, the track a 4 of Lovers in Japan and Rain of Love together. We move on to Yes, which also has a hidden track.
Yeah.
This one, surprise, surprise, is written by Coldplay and produced by Brian Eno, Marcus Travis, and Rick Simpson. It features the songs Yes and Chinese Sleep Chant. Yes is, I just wrote this as the first thing, so it's my second favorite song on the album, so I guess you'll know how I feel about that. It has dark strings and it has a low register from Chris, and it gives it a sultry and haunting feeling. And it also goes 7/8 time for one bar here and there to keep you on your toes, I wrote, which I think is pretty fun. And then it has a great string break and melody that leads into one of my favorite choruses from them of all time. It feels like a lament, almost like a blues song.
I get that. Yeah.
What did you think about this one?
It's interesting because we're keeping up our theme of liking opposite songs.
I knew you wouldn't like this one.
This is a 3 for me.
Yep. Is this your least favorite?
It's my least favorite.
Nice.
Yeah.
I figured it's most people's least favorite song on the album.
Yeah. Well, I can see why, in the sense that if you're a fan of Coldplay and you hear this song, it's very different to all their other songs. So if you like that sound, I can see how you're like, for me, it ultimately felt very droney to me, which when you say, it's like the repetition of like a blues song, I see that and I agree. I think it just didn't work for me as much as a blues song.
Yeah, I didn't think it would. This is a 5 for me.
You were like, this won't work for David.
No, I knew because as soon as I saw that nobody else liked this song, I was like, oh yeah, I'm alone. Which usually happens.
But damn, a 5.
Yeah, that's a 5 for me. That's one of my favorite songs by them.
Yeah.
And then it moves into Chinese Sleep Chant, which is kind of like an anti-authoritarian song, but it's really just like sleep and you'll be satisfied, basically. It's kind of, that's basically what they're saying. And it's disorienting and haunting, and it fits the theme of the album very well, I said.
I feel like it has much more of a pure rock opening.
Oh, yeah.
Than a lot of other songs.
Did you like this one more?
I gave it 3.5. I did.
Okay. Yeah. This is a 4.5 for me, so it's a little bit less.
I found it interesting how the vocals are almost in the background in the song.
Oh, yeah.
I've never heard that done before, and I think it's an interesting idea.
It's like drowning out. It's being drowned out by everything else, which I think is really cool. And they talked about how like this song, if you strip out kind of all of the like sounds and like sound design they did, it's really just a simple song.
Yeah.
But all of those weird sounds make it like super cool.
Oh, yeah, I agree.
So this track, the two combined, is a 4.5 for me.
So I guess for me, it's like a 3.25.
Yeah.
Something like that.
That moves us on to track number 7.
The song of this album.
Viva La Vida.
Yeah.
Written by Coldplay, produced by Brian Eno, Marcus Travis, and Rick Simpson. This song got widespread critical acclaim.
Yep.
And I think this is probably their best like hit song.
Yeah.
And somehow it is still respected to this day, which I think is really interesting because a lot of times people write off Coldplay as just kind of a whatever.
Yeah.
But this song is really special to a lot of people that don't even like them.
And I think that when you listen to it, you realize why.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
This is the first British song since 1971 to top both the Hot 100 and the UK singles chart at the same time.
What was the last one?
It's Rod Stewart. But I don't remember what song it was. Something I'd never heard before by him.
Right. Something no one remembers really now.
Right. Maybe other people remember it. I just don't care about Rod Stewart, to be honest. I know Do You Think I'm Sexy, and that's about it.
Nice.
No, I don't, Rod. This song was accused of plagiarism by a bunch of people.
I saw that.
And Chris
They're
Martin
jealous.
says, he says, if everyone's trying to take away our best song, then we'd better write 25 better ones, which I think is a great quote.
Hell yeah. I support that.
This song was Song of the Year at the 2009 Grammys, which I can see why.
Yeah.
I have a few things I just want to say about it before I hear what you say. This song is very obviously part of the album, and it's unlike a lot of other singles I've heard from around this time where you can tell they wrote it to be a hit. This song doesn't necessarily feel like it was written to be a hit. It feels like it is written for the album, which I really enjoy because it doesn't feel out of place at all.
Yeah, I agree with that.
It has really good lyrics, probably some of their best from this album, and they can be interpreted from a number of perspectives as well, because you can either be the king, you can be the king at any point, like in the song, or you can be one of the peasants in his under his rule.
Yeah, there's a lot of ways to interpret it.
I love the line, "Oh, who would ever want to be king?" as well. I think that's a great line that goes right into the chorus then.
Yeah.
The second verse, getting the counter melody from the violin is really good. And then I wrote after it, actually, the whole second verse is just beautiful with the piano and choir. And then also, which I knew, but I never really thought about, the bridge is instrumental except for oohs that go into the final chorus, which are will.
Yeah, which I feel like people forget about.
Yeah, it's actually kind of a unique song to be a massive hit.
Yeah.
But what did you think about this one? Because this is one you've heard before.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard this one a lot of times.
Did you ever hear it on your own? Did you seek it out, or was it just everywhere? Because this is a song that is everywhere.
It is everywhere, yeah. The reason why it's so big and so well respected is because I think that every time you listen to it, it feels fresh. No matter how many times you listen to it. It's iconic without being overplayed, even though it's played all the time. Yeah. Which kind of feels like it should be impossible, but it isn't. And I think that's because of the production of it. It's so well written. Everything from the lyrics to the background, and the build on the song is amazing.
I agree.
It's a 5. This is my favorite song.
This is a 5 for me too.
Favorite on the album.
This is not my favorite on the album.
Oh,
which
wow.
you'll hear later.
So intrigued now.
Yes. And I even put Yes above this song, which is also a 5.
Yeah, I got
this is probably one of the best hit singles of all time. Yeah. For as big of a song as it is, I'm still blown away by how good it is.
I feel like sometimes you listen to a hit and you're like, why was this a hit? Or I can see why, but it's gonna die down. This is the type of song where you listen to it and you're like, I understand why it's a hit, and it's never not going to go away. It's gonna always be here.
Yes. Yeah. For sure.
Yeah. I don't even know what else there is to say about this song.
Yeah, it's just good.
Yeah.
That moves us into number 8, Violet Hill, written by Coldplay, produced by Brian Eno, Marcus Travis, and Rick Simpson. We're just going to get those out of the way real fast because there is one other song left on here that has a different credit.
Yeah.
This was the lead single from the album, which is crazy to me.
So interesting.
Because it only came out 3 weeks before Viva La Vida, which only came out 5 weeks before the album.
And then Viva La Vida just blew it out the water, I'm assuming.
This is an anti-war protest song, and it's the most rock song on the album for sure.
I was going to say that, yeah.
It did okay in the US at number 40 it peaked at, but it reached number 8 in the UK, which it was a much bigger hit there. Violet Hill is a street in the UK.
Well, I also saw that they were inspired by Abbey Road.
Yes, I think that's what it is. I think it's by Abbey Road.
Yeah, and they were inspired by the Beatles album and song too.
Yeah, which I feel like I can get in here. Yeah. There's definitely a very British vibe to this song.
Knowing that and listening to it and seeing how rock it is, you can totally see that it was inspired by Abbey Road.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is from Genius. I don't know if this is true, but I want to say it because it's interesting and I do think it's funny. There's no source for this, but it says the first line, "It was a long and dark December," was the first line the band ever wrote, but they could never finish the rest of the song, which I don't know if that's true, but that's a great story.
I feel that.
And this song was inspired by Bill O'Reilly on Fox News.
What?
Yep.
Why Bill O'Reilly?
Chris was watching Bill O'Reilly rant about something, probably about immigration or war. And he was like, fuck this shit. I'm writing a protest song.
Hell yeah.
So this one has big guitar stabs that descend a semitone at a time. And I think they fire you up and get you angry. It's it's almost like a descent into madness, into the big part. It has a guitar solo on the bridge, which I think is really good. Shout out Johnny. And the chorus consists of, if you love me, won't you let me know? Or if you love me, why'd you let me go? And I always interpreted this as someone begging to not be killed in war.
I can see that.
What did you think about this song?
I liked it. It's a 4 for me.
4.5 for me.
Yeah. I like the electric guitar parts, which, is, I feel like, a big part why it feels like a rock song. And I think it does feel very different to a lot of their other songs, particularly in this album, because it doesn't feel like a ballad or like a, very positive. It's like purely a rock song. And it had a very interesting ending, I wanted to say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought this was going to be your favorite song. That was my prediction before the album.
I like it. I want to go back to it. I could see the score going up in the future.
Because it's got more of a like heavier rock sound to it that I could see like this being in the 60s or 70s for sure.
I could see that too. I feel like I am kind of picky with rock songs though, but it depends.
Yeah, well, this is still a 4, so you liked it.
Yeah,
obviously.
I did like it. Yeah.
That moves us into track number 9, Strawberry Swing, written by Coldplay, produced by Brian Eno, Marcus Travis, and Rick Simpson. This is the one that has the West African influences, which I don't understand that. It says West African influences from Chris's time in Zimbabwe. Zimbabwe's in southern Africa, so I don't know how the West Africa gets in there. But anyway.
The English are not that good at their geography.
Apparently not. The most important thing is that Chris spent time in Zimbabwe and was around a lot of African music, which inspired this. And it was rated as one of the most psychologically relaxing songs. I saw that on the Wikipedia article for this song, and I thought that's very interesting because I do think it's not like super relaxing, but it is kind of just a nice vibe.
I think that it worked on me because I wrote down one note for the song. I said it feels like a return to like the sound of the earlier songs on the album.
Okay, yeah.
And I was like, that's it. It's a vibe song,
Yeah.
I feel like I didn't even need to like say anything more about it.
Yeah. To me, this is the flip side of Violet Hill. Like, it's the most calm after the most like, aggressive.
Yeah. I gave it a 4, so that also it's like matches.
Nice.
Yeah.
And then also I wanted to say in this, they say, now my feet won't touch the ground. This is a common motif throughout all of their music. I believe it was in 2000, they had a song called like No More Keeping My Feet on the Ground or something like that. They've said, now my feet won't touch the ground. I think there's a song called that as well from like the Milo Zoloto era. And then in Life in Technicolor 2, the one with lyrics, they say also, now my feet won't touch the ground, which is a very like, there's kind of a flying kind of feeling to a lot of their songs for some reason, which I think is kind of fun.
I like that.
Also, this is a 5. This is my favorite song on the album.
Damn.
This might be the best song of their career.
Now I want to go back and listen to it some more.
It is.
After knowing that it's your favorite.
There's nothing really that I can say about it because it's just so good. I think everything works perfectly. And track 9. Once again, proving my theory. I'm not even trying to do this, by the way. I just like notice it sometimes, and it's like, wow.
Jesus.
Yeah.
I got to start saying which tracks are my favorites and see if there's a number for that. Maybe it's 7 because Viva La Vida 7.
I've been noticing definitely like 1 through 3. You always seem to give a really high. There's one in there that you really love.
Yeah, that's
because I'm thinking back to Contaminated. I think that's track 3.
Yeah.
On Banks' album.
Yeah, on that album, 1 through 4, I think it was, all of them were like 4.5 and above or something.
Yeah. Which moves us into the last song, track 10, which is a double song as well. This one is written by Coldplay and John Hopkins, and it's produced by Brian Eno, Marcus Travis, Rick Simpson, and John Hopkins.
Nice. Whenever you say John Hopkins, I think of the university. I just can't.
Johns Hopkins, for some unknown reason.
Same thing.
Yeah.
Bullshit.
John is spelled Jon, though. So make a note of that in your head. That. Yes, I do too.
Probably short for Jonathan.
The quiet part of this song was meant as an intro for Rainy Day, which is a song from Prospects March. And that originally was called School. I don't know exactly, but I found a like demo version of it on YouTube, and it's very interesting to see how it goes into Rainy Day. Because I do think Rainy Day is a good song. That's probably it might not be my favorite from Prospects March, but it's one of my favorites from there. I love the piano on here. I love the like ballad that it starts with, and then it goes into the kind of multiple sections like 42 does. And I really do like this song. Is there anything you have to say about the first part of this, which is the Death and All His Friends part?
It's interesting that he said that the beginning was meant for a song from Prospects March because I feel like the beginning felt almost like a lullaby to me. Yeah, which I liked. And I think the pickup was interesting. I don't know. I did feel like with this particular song and the fact that there are two, I feel like I was kind of like, where does one start and one end? You know?
Yeah.
Which is interesting. I thought it was interesting because it's like you said, the song is kind of like not split, but it has sections. And because of that, I was kind of like, where does one start and where does one end?
Yeah.
Which I think is interesting.
The hidden track is The Escapist, which is the part that like flows into basically the opening of it. So that's kind of where it splits, but there is the part where when you get the drums and the big instruments where it's like this almost feels like a separate song.
Yeah. And I liked that, the drums, like the pickup there. I really liked that. But I was confused. I was like, is this?
It also has a disjointed beat, which I never really realized how many there were in this like album era.
Yeah, I feel like you also don't notice the drums that much in this album up until this point. At least for me.
Yeah. I think this is my favorite album by them. I think this is when you can most clearly hear each member's contribution of like each song like starts with a thing that they do,
Yeah.
And then The Escapist is technically the last song on the album because it's the like hidden track.
Yeah.
And I wrote down two things on here. I said, I feel like this specific track inspired the 1975's Quieter music. I had been listening to some of their stuff earlier in the day.
Yeah.
And I was like, whoa, I can almost like see a parallel. They're also from the UK. So shout out UK.
Oh, yeah.
I wrote down the lyric from The Escapist, and in the end, we lie awake and we dream of making our escape. I really like the themes in this album and how everything is like tied together. There's nothing that like doesn't fit. It all like works and it all accomplishes the mission of like this kind of revolutionary ideal.
And to that point, I feel like The Escapist is the coda of all that.
Yeah.
Both musically and lyrically, which I think is very fitting as the last song on the album.
I agree.
Yeah.
Both of these songs result in the track being a 4.5 because they're both 4.5.
Yeah.
What did you rate it?
For me, it's the same thing, but with a 3.5.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. I had an interesting like relationship with this album.
Okay.
Because I didn't dislike any song. Maybe aside from which is like I don't particularly like it, but I don't hate it. It's interesting because there were songs I really like Life in Technicolor, Cemeteries of London, and then a lot of the songs around Viva La Vida. But it's at the end of the day, I felt like this was an album that was like buoyed by Viva La Vida. I feel like it was an album of solid songs with a couple of really, really good songs for me personally, which is interesting because I was like, I thought I would like it a lot more.
Interesting.
Yeah. Now I'm intrigued to hear their other albums.
Yes, because I think this is the most like different out of all of them. This album is a 5 for me. This is my favorite album by them. I think I probably have other albums that I would rate a 5 by them.
Yeah.
But this is my favorite. And I do think listening to the Prospects March edition and the additional singles like kind of tie it together, but I didn't want to subject you to 24 songs right off the bat.
Maybe in the future, yeah. If Viva La Vida was not in this album, it would be a 3.5. With it, it's a 4.
Okay, well that's way better than I thought you were saying. We were building this up to make me think it was going to be like a 3.
Yeah, it's a 4 for me.
Okay, so you still enjoyed it. That's good.
No, it's still an enjoyable album. I think a part of it might be that I do love the rock of like 60s, 70s, 80s. And it is very different to this style of rock. And maybe that's why.
Yeah, that was another thing that I didn't really mention is what is the genre on this? It could be art rock.
Yeah,
it could
I
be
would say
alternative.
pop rock. I feel like it's in the middle.
But there's also like not really it's weird.
It kind of goes back and forth, and it goes back and forth within some songs.
Exactly. I agree.
Yeah. So that's why I feel like it is hard to pinpoint.
And I also did want to say that I watched a bunch of interviews from this time, and Chris said in one of them that this was the album that he wanted to give to the kids who got bullied at school on the playground for saying that their favorite band was Coldplay because he was like, we need to make better music, basically.
And I support that. And they wrote Viva La Vida, so they did.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is a 5 for me. I usually say this is one of my favorite albums of all time. I think this whole era is their best era. And
I do feel like it was the era where they were the most prominent.
Yes, I agree. There are definitely other songs that come after that I feel like had bigger singular impacts.
But not as an album.
Right. As an album, this kind of feels like this is when they were respected by music critics of like, you took a big swing and you nailed it, you know, which I think is really good.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I love this album. I love Coldplay.
I really like it.
We have so many more albums to do by them.
Oh, yeah.
And all of them have their own unique thing that is like
which I'm very
different
by. Which is, I can even tell now because, for instance, A Sky Full of Stars.
Yeah,
that's a very different song.
That's interesting because it's an EDM song, and the rest of that album is not. It is so quiet, and I'm going to say something crazy, which some people have said before. I think that song works perfectly in that album.
Yeah, that's interesting.
So that Ghost Stories was my favorite album by them for a long time, but I think Viva La Vida is more solid, like all the way through.
Yeah, I will say I love A Sky Full of Stars, so we'll see what I think of the other songs on that album.
Yes, they're very sad. So that whole album is like pretty sad.
I could get into some sad songs.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
With that, shall we move on to our other British entry this week?
Let's do it. Dangerous Liaisons. As usual, I'm going to start with the IMDb logline. A scheming widow and her manipulative ex-lover make a bet regarding the corruption of a recently married woman. Directed by Stephen Frears, who, as you said, is British.
Yes. Written by a British guy, too.
Yeah. Christopher Hampton wrote it based off his play,
Les Liaisons Dangereuses.
Yeah. Thank you.
I think.
The French was mixing my tongue up. So it was written by him based off of the epistolary novel, which means told through like letters, of the same name by Pierre Choderlos de la Closse.
Perfect pronunciation. I didn't understand any of that. Yeah. That's just how French should be spoken.
Exactly. You don't need to understand French.
Exactly.
So the film is based off both of those, his play and the original novel.
When is the original novel from? Is it 17 something?
1700s. I have the date down. 1782. There we go.
Okay.
Produced by Norma Heyman and Hank Moonjean. I like that last name. Cinematography by Philip Roselette, something like that. Costumes by James Aitchison, edited by Mike Audsley, and music by George Fenton. And I know they use some classical music too. And then for the cast, Glenn Close. I'm not going to say the characters' names because...
Oh my God. I don't even remember the characters' names. I mean,
I can remind you with bad French.
I know Vicomte, but that's about it. Everybody else is like
that.
Lady something of something. And I was just like, okay, whatever.
Yeah, I'm not going to even try. Glenn Close, John Malkovich, Michelle Pfeiffer, Swoosie Kurtz, which plays like the mom of Uma Thurman, and Keanu Reeves.
Yeah, which I didn't even... I knew Keanu Reeves was in this, and I didn't even realize that was him.
He's so young in this film.
So young.
Yeah.
I thought he was actually quite good, too.
Yeah.
I was surprised.
Well, I think he fits like the deer in headlights kind of character, because he is very young. And also, I do feel like he's good at playing these types of roles of like naive young guy that's like, what's going on? So, yeah. Obviously based on the 1782 book by Pierre Choderlos de la Closse, who was a French novelist, official, army general, and Freemason.
Wow.
Yeah, he was a lot.
Congratulations to him.
Yeah, found success. And he wanted to write something that was different, that would make a lot of noise, which it did. Because
I can see that.
Yeah, it made a lot of noise, and it was very scandalous because all the nobility and rich people were like, how the hell are you writing about us like this? And it was banned and stuff like that. Marie Antoinette really liked it though. So she had a special version of it bound in black so she could actually like have a copy, or else no one would let her. And it was banned in 1824 later, but it was still a bestseller. It still sold really well because everyone loves sex and terrible people as protagonists.
Yeah.
And obviously it went on to become a play where Alan Rickman starred in, which I would have loved to see.
I know who that is, but I don't know at the same time.
He would have also been amazing, although I love John Malkovich in this film.
Okay.
He's perfect. But I also think that Alan Rickman would have been great. Hampton was approached by Milos Forman, who was a Czech director who did Amadeus and One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest and all those films.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was approached by Forman to direct a film version. but Foreman never showed up to their meeting. So then Hampton was like, okay, I'll go with like these other people. But Foreman still made his version, which came out a year after this film.
Whoa.
Yeah, and he actually asked Pfeiffer to play Glenn Close's character, but Pfeiffer chose this film.
Interesting.
Yeah. It's very interesting. I've heard that the other film is not as good, but we'll talk about that a little bit at the end of the notes. They shot in France. And I found it really funny that the production designer Stuart Craig went to England to find a French chateau, and then he was like, wait a second, all the French chateaus are in France.
Wow.
So very British.
Yeah. Very British.
Yeah. And Glenn Close almost didn't join because she had just given birth to her first child, or her child. I don't know if she has more than one. But then she joined halfway through. And famously, Malkovich and Pfeiffer had an affair on set.
Oh.
And it ended both of their marriages.
Ooh.
Malkovich's to Glenn Headley and Pfeiffer's to Peter Horton. Just, damn.
Wow.
Yeah.
Just like the movie.
Exactly like the movie. And last thing I want to bring up was that Uma Thurman more recently stated that she felt that she should do her nude scenes in the film at the time, even though she was nervous. But she was like, it's an art film, it's about the French,
French love their nudity.
Yeah. And she was like, the scene is appropriate. She has now said that she was horrified by the way it was filmed. She said it was filmed in a very like voyeuristic way. And she kind of regrets it now.
Okay.
Filming like her nude scenes.
I do want to say one thing.
Yeah.
She was born in 1970. This movie came out in 1988.
Yeah.
Was she a minor?
Probably.
Because most of the time you're not going to shoot your movie in the same year it comes out.
And that's why I wanted to bring this up.
Right.
Because I think with films like that, and obviously like she agreed to it, but with films like this, you see why intimacy coordinators are important.
Very necessary,
yeah,
yes.
Very, very important on set. But yeah, this film came out in 1988, as you said, and it was a critical and commercial hit. And it made $34 million on its $14 million budget. That's
so wild to hear as well, of like that being a hit, because the margins are so different than they are now, where it's like you need to make like over $100 million above your budget to be even a hit, which is so interesting.
It's crazy. Yeah. It was a different time.
It really was.
Yeah. And it was nominated at the 61st Academy Awards for Best Picture, Best Actress, Supporting Actress, Screenplay based on material from another medium, as it was called back then. Instead of adapted. I don't know why. Best Art Direction, Best Costume Design, and Best Original Score. It only won Screenplay, Art Direction, Costume Design. And we'll talk about that because I think that some actors were robbed.
I'm going to say specifically Glenn Close.
Glenn Close was robbed.
I think she was easily the best part of this film.
100%.
Yeah, she's incredible.
I think this is, out of what I've seen, her best performance.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I've heard that most of her performances are her best performance because she just gives 100%.
She is like that type of actress.
Yeah.
But yeah, let's get into it.
Let's.
What did you think?
Well, do you want me to start off with something crazy?
Let's start off with something crazy.
All right, here we go. I did not like this film at all.
Okay.
I can
see why.
I actively hated it, in fact.
Yeah.
I was about 30 minutes in. I was like, when is this going to be over?
Yeah.
But I have reasons, and I wrote down a bunch of stuff of specific things I want to kind of go over. So I will say, I think Glenn Close was the best part of this film. I thought her character was well written. I thought she did a great job acting.
Yeah.
And I completely believed her.
100%.
I did not believe for a second John Malkovich, his character or him as an actor. I thought he was completely terrible in this, and which I know is an unpopular opinion. And I wondered if I've never seen him in anything else. I wondered if he was even a good actor after this. I thought that he felt very rapey. I thought he felt very stiff, and I didn't think he had chemistry with anyone. Yeah. Maybe a little bit with Glenn Close, but really that was it. I could not see any chemistry with any of the other characters except for his little sidekick dude, But that's different because I have to believe that he is a master of sex, I guess. And I didn't see him being, if I was any of the women, I would be repulsed by this man, and I would be like, get me the fuck out of here because I do not want to be around him.
I get that. I do have to disagree. I think
that's fair.
It works for me. I think, I don't know. I feel like he's very good at playing just a totally terrible person.
Yes, and I did want to bring up something about the terrible person thing, because this, once again, we have probably my least favorite film, but it's another one written by a British person, which I think is interesting.
You don't like British people?
I guess not. But I did want to bring up the show You, which I don't know if you've ever seen on Netflix.
I've never even heard of it.
Okay, it's very good. It's with Penn Badgley, who plays a character who is... I don't even know how to describe him. He's like psychologically messed up. He's constantly watching women. He's like manipulating everything around him to get with these women. And then he's also killing people at the same time. But I believe him because he has the like charisma to sell it. And if I was in the position of any of his victims, I could see myself like falling for that, because he's so like... he puts on a persona where I feel like this character, and I don't think that's so much John Malkovich. I think it's more of the writing of this character just doesn't have any moments to show that he's like not even a good person, but that he has like some shred of humanity that could endear you to him.
That's interesting. I think for me, the reason why it works is because we see his bad parts, you know, like we see who he actually is, but the characters that he's seducing don't.
Right.
Which is why I think it works for me, because, you know, I'm like, I know that he's a terrible person, but they obviously don't. And I know that he is, you know, putting on a front, which is why I think that it does work for me that he is able to manipulate and seduce.
I guess for me, the front wasn't believable enough. But I also wanted to say something about the writing.
Yeah. Well, I did want to say about the front quickly. When it comes to Michelle Pfeiffer's character, I do think that is part of his front is that he was the terrible person.
I believe with her the most.
Yeah.
But I still don't believe it enough. Yeah. I think, because I can see that, but I think it's also some of her reactions to it is really not like immediately she's just like, oh my God, he showered me with praise for 1 minute. I'm in love with him, which maybe, I don't know.
But I feel like it takes a while for them to get there.
Yeah, but you can tell like in her portrayal, I guess. And for that, it didn't really work.
I feel like it works for me.
That's fair.
It is what it is.
I did want to say about the writing.
Yeah.
This felt the most like a stage play of anything we've read.
Yeah.
And I mean that in a negative way. Because there's something that I've noticed, which is why I don't really love stage plays that much, is everything feels scripted, but in a way where it's like, this is what's going to happen, and this is the outcome that has to happen based on this thing that happened. I feel like I can almost see under the hood of the writer figuring out how this story is going to work, and I did not like that.
I can see that a little.
I also think it's melodramatic.
Yeah. Well, I think that falls into the period piece-ness of it, you know? And I didn't feel like it was overly melodramatic. I feel like the tone is horrifying. it's like this is I watch it with my mom. Yeah. Which is probably not the...
Which also, I was like a few minutes into this, I was like, what? Because you had told me you watched it with your mom, and I was like, this doesn't seem like a film that I'd want to watch with anyone.
I was just watching off to the side. Like, you know. No, but she's like, when it finished, she liked it. But she said, like, this is a Satanist film. In the sense of, like, what it makes you feel. And I agree, because it's like kind of horrifying watching.
It is horrifying.
And I feel like that's what I got from it, not really melodrama. Like there is maybe a little bit, but I feel like that's also inherent to adapting a period piece.
I think novel. That's kind of what I was more getting at of the like this period. I mean, you know, we've been there, you know, but I do think it does feel like watching a rape.
No, yeah.
And I don't like that. And I feel like
I do feel like it's intentional though, in some ways.
I agree. Yeah. I do think there's a way to make it less disgusting, I guess.
Because but I do feel like that in some ways you need the disgust in order to realize how terrible the characters are.
I guess so. Maybe that's just something I don't want to watch.
No, yeah, and I understand that. Like, it just speaks to like the way that society was then in a lot of ways. And I think it's just an interesting look at that. I feel like it's meant to make you feel disgusted, and obviously it's not for everyone.
Yeah. The reason that I didn't completely write it off immediately was because of Glenn Close, and I thought that she was a compelling character as well. I thought she was by far the most well-written character because she had a lot of things where she would say, and I was kind of like, oh, this makes like total sense. Like I totally get her angle of it. I just felt like the other characters I didn't really believe, I guess. And then also I wrote down here that I don't believe, I mean, I already kind of said that I don't think anybody would be in love with John Malkovich's character, but I did not believe that he was convincing enough to make Michelle Pfeiffer fall in love with him. I get kind of the, like what he was saying, but the tone he was saying it in felt very much like I'm watching him not care, you know, and kind of like play her. But then it almost felt like she was like, they were treating her like she was dumb almost, like, and not kind of falling for her, because I felt like he was just not even trying to really seduce her in any way or to make her feel special. It was just kind of like, I'm going to say all these hollow words in a kind of deadpan tone.
The impression I got more from that was the role that he's playing is of a man that knows that he won't be able to get her.
Okay, yeah.
I don't know.
I can kind of see that.
And it just ended up working for me. I feel like when he first tries, you definitely do get the feeling that like he's not successful because he's not doing it right. Like it's not working. And I agree with you with like the hollow words. I do kind of feel like in the beginning that's done on purpose.
And I liked that.
Yeah. But
I
then
felt like
I
fell
do feel like
that.
the more he tries, the better he gets at it.
Okay.
In my opinion.
And I felt the more he tries, the less I believed
that's
it.
Interesting. Yeah, I don't know. I think it worked for me.
Yeah.
Yeah. I agree though that like Glenn Close steals the show.
Oh, absolutely.
100%.
I just kept waiting for her to come back.
She is my favorite part of this film. And I say that as someone that does really, really like this film. Yeah. But particularly like the ending of just her wiping off her makeup.
I thought that was really cool. Yeah. Actually,
I like that. I understand like not liking this film. You know, like I get it.
I will say that I think this is a good pairing because I feel like the music could have been in this film. Almost. Like it fits very well in the like the costumes, you know?
No,
like,
I completely agree.
Yeah, I feel like this just it wasn't a film I enjoyed.
So what did you give it? I'm interested.
I gave it a 1.
Oh, damn. I think that's the lowest score.
Yeah. Easily the lowest score.
This is
lowest score of anything I've done.
This is a 4.5 for me.
Yes.
I almost gave it a 5. I do think that there are some technical things that hold it back a little.
There's some bad ADR. Like, you know, it's similar with Ordinary People where I was like, oh, what are they saying? I can't hear. And then it's super loud.
I still think it looks really beautiful.
It looks amazing.
Yeah, it looks beautiful. There are just like some technical things that kind of kept it back. And there were some scenes that did feel a little awkward, even though like I still think it works well.
The blocking on a lot of it is very stage play.
Well, yeah,
and I kept noticing that.
I think in some ways that could have also been done on purpose too.
I agree. I do think it was.
Period piece.
Because I kind of liked that because it's over the top in some ways.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I felt like the writing and kind of the story I was less bought into than
which I can
kind
understand.
of the world of it.
I think it worked very well for me.
Do I not like British writers?
Maybe you just don't. Maybe you just don't like period pieces, which is valid.
I do like period pieces because I've watched some that I really enjoy. I think maybe I don't like things from the 1700s because I mean, I was an English major. I read a lot of old books and most of the time I hated them. I thankfully have never read Shakespeare. That was my goal as an English major, to escape all 4 years without reading Shakespeare because I don't like him. I think it's just, it feels very rudimentary.
Have you ever watched him on stage though?
I have not.
Okay.
No.
Because I would say when you watch it on stage, it works.
I think that also is something that's different for me, is that I'm much more willing to accept it in a play form, and I'm much less willing to accept it in a movie. I feel like a movie should be more realistic, or like either realistic or like lean into the like science fiction kind of thing where it's like so obviously like you have to suspend your disbelief, but this feels too close to being real and not realistic enough.
Well,
if it was a play, I think this would be so much better, but it doesn't work for me as a movie.
I think it's also the fact maybe that it didn't work for you is that the truth of like that time, which obviously this is like a fictional story, but I'm sure things like this did happen.
Right.
But the truth of that time is so removed from where we are now. So maybe that's why it also didn't work for you, you know?
I don't know. I felt like I get where you're going with that, but I feel like there was so little agency for any of the female characters besides Glenn Close that I almost didn't believe.
Well, I feel like that's kind of the theme of it too.
I mean, but they, I guess not even showing anything was kind of, I mean, this does not pass the Bechdel test either.
No, it doesn't.
But not that that's like a good mark to measure anything on, because I think there's great films that don't.
Yeah.
But it was very much like there's one aspect to their lives, which, you know, is the time of it. But I feel like there's a way to make it less, I guess, all consuming.
No, I can see that.
But I don't know. Maybe that's my complaint that I should take up with British people in general.
Yeah. Start emailing those British people. Yeah,
I'm just going to, whenever I see any British person on social media, I'm just going to be like, what did your country do to film?
Yeah.
But also, I love what you've done to music. Some of my all-time favorite musicians are from the UK.
It's interesting because I like the film more than you did. You like the album more than I did.
Yeah.
So it also kind of tracks like that.
Yeah.
I think we can both agree, though, that like Glenn Close should have won that Oscar.
Absolutely. Yeah. She's by far the best part of this movie.
I think she is like one of the best actresses of her age, if not of all time. I could
easily see that, because she is one where I like immediately was captivated by her performance, even if I didn't, and I did think that her character was good, even if I didn't like necessarily like her character, or if I wouldn't have, I guess I still would have thought she's an amazing actress, because she's just like, there's just something about her, you know, she has that inexplicable thing that just draws you to her.
She's one of those actors where even if the movie doesn't work around her, she works.
Yeah.
And
she's giving her all.
For me, that's not this movie, but I know that is for you. So it's like, I feel like for you can see that in here.
Yeah. And I will say I debated about a 1.5 to match Sexy Beast, the other British film. But I decided ultimately Sexy Beast had some parts where I was laughing and where I was like more engaged. Yeah. I just didn't really care about the story overall. This part, I just kind of felt like, or this movie, I just kind of felt like I was waiting for it to be over.
Yeah. I will say, both British films we covered are very dark. Now that you think about it, like,
yeah.
I'm intrigued to see what our next British film is going to be and how you react to that.
Yeah, I'm wondering if we're going to do a British comedy at some point, because I feel like there's
Alfie, which I know is a very dark 60s movie. It's like a dark comedy.
We have to do another dark British movie
just to continue the trend.
Yeah,
we'll do it.
Okay. I don't know. I wanted to like this movie somewhat, but then I also decided, like, at a point, I was like, this is just not something that I enjoy, and I don't think it ever will be.
Yeah.
And I'm okay with that, honestly. Yeah. Like, you know, that's just not my style.
I know for me, this film was kind of chilling. Which I do feel like is what they wanted the effect to be. Yeah, I think it just really, really worked for me. And I ended the film being like, oh my God, like, I can't imagine that people like this exist, even though they do. And I don't know. I feel like for me, it was kind of like a horror film without any actual horror.
Well,
which kind of works for me.
I don't know. When John Malkovich gets super rapey, that's pretty horrifying.
Well, that's what I mean. You know,
I mean, I'd classify that more towards like a psychological torment.
Yeah.
You know?
No, I mean, I think it is that, but I think that's also the point of the film.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it did really work for me like that. What can I say?
Yeah, I've been thinking about my Letterboxd review, and I haven't seen The Idol, but I was thinking about comparing it to The Idol because I feel like it kind of strikes the same chord for me.
Oh, God.
So, I don't know. Have you seen The Idol?
No, I don't want to.
Yeah, I don't really want to either, because I think it's going to be bad and just not even worth my time.
Like half a star. That's what I think.
Right. That's kind of what I'm assuming as well. But I don't know. I'm still thinking about what I'm going to say, but I think that...
Well, you're going to have to update everyone on the podcast.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, everyone will see because they'll already be following my Letterboxd and my Rate Your Music and your Letterboxd and Rate Your Music.
That's right. They're definitely following.
And maybe our Instagrams too.
That's right. Where we announce what the next episode is going to be every Sunday.
Exactly.
That's right.
And well, not even our Instagrams. That's our, as a collective Instagram, which you should also follow.
That actually exists.
And then you can also think, wow, I should leave a review. I should leave a comment on Spotify.
I should leave a like.
Exactly. I should email them and tell them my thoughts.
That's right. upcpod@gmail.com.
Exactly. So all of those things, that's what I would be thinking if this was the end of the episode, which I think it might be. Well, we'll see you next week.
See you next week.